Thank you all for being here. And I actually think I will, if I may, Pamela, may I start with you? I just wanted to ask, thank you for being here with us. How is your family doing? And just how has it been being a part of the journey with this film, the retelling of obviously a tremendously painful but important story of your daughter's life and your family's life?
Thank you. Our family we're healing as a family. Obviously, this was a very traumatic experience for us. This was a tragedy for both myself and the children. The children are very young when this happened, and they still are. To go through such an unimaginable loss has been honestly devastating. Never in my life did I think that I would be in this space where I have to share with the world something that is so painful, something that is so traumatic, and something that should have never happened to begin with. But with the love and support of our family and the community, we are healing, and it's a day-by-day process. In terms of the film and being here, it's a bittersweet moment. Again, it should have never happened, but I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to share with the world our story, and that the world cares enough to hear our story, and hopefully impact a real change in our society.
Geeta, I understand that you have a personal connection with the story yourself, the genesis of it. Can you just talk about how you became, and you said earlier kind of that someone had to persuade you that this was a film, and I'm curious how you found your way into it.
Sure. So this story came to us through our family. Nikon Kwantu is my life partner, and when this happened, Ajika was very close with two of the people who are here today, Kimberly Robinson and Lisi, and Takima Robinson. Takima and Kimberly are our family. And so when this happened, we immediately got a phone call about the fact that Ajika had been murdered, and we jumped into action. And I actually want to pass it to you.
Right, so Takima wanted to go down to Florida to start, mobilizing, for the family. And she came to New York and, she had a layover. We went down to Florida. She came to New York to go to Florida. We went to Florida, and we started gathering media to support the family, to get out the story, to make sure that Susan didn't, that she got arrested. We wanted to put pressure on the court system so that she would get arrested, and also that she had a charge that we felt was appropriate and the family felt was appropriate. So we started gathering media for that. And a couple of months later, through the Freedom of Information Act, the family lawyer, Anthony Thomas, who also works with Benjamin Crump, who I believe is here, over there.
Benjamin, could you please stand up, Benjamin?
Right. So Anthony Thomas got sued sued the sheriff's department in Ocala, and got us a whole bunch of the media. The footage that surrounded Susan. And her calling the police repeatedly. And from there, we started looking at the footage and realized that there's a story here that actually talked about the family, the community, and showcased Ajika in this very human way.
The footage is obviously so integral, the way that you tell this story. I mean, I can imagine the story is worth telling via any means, but when you had access to that, and I certainly haven't seen a film that is a feature that to the lengths that this one goes to tell it through police body cam footage. And I'm just wondering, how did you begin putting that together?
Sure. So I think when we received the footage, it was in a jumble. It was actually it's just we received a drive that the attorneys sent to us, and we had to piece it together. There was body camera footage, police body camera footage. There was ring camera footage. There was cell phone footage, dash cam footage. There were audio interviews the detectives had done after the fact with the community, and then there was also all the 911 calls that both Susan had made and that the community had made. And so I used to be an editor, as I think a lot of people in this room know, and so I felt really compelled to dive into it and try to piece it together. So I basically strung it out in a timeline, and it took a couple of weeks to really identify the chronology and also what camera went with what sound and how many police were on scene. Because sometimes there were 2, sometimes there, as you could see the night of, there were up to 10 or maybe 15. We weren't sure. But so I was able to, over time, with Nikon's help, string it out. And then we really, that's when we were like, there's a film. As Nikon mentioned, it went back 2 years. And this footage, we were able to see how we could show the community as they were before. And we could, again, oftentimes in these kind of tragedies, you only see the aftermath. But we wanted to show this beautiful community living together, loving each other, raising children together, and how the impact of one outlier with a gun could change everything. And also, we believe that the body camera footage was undeniable. Again, we weren't there directing things. We weren't there having an influence on what happened. The police were. And again, the police come into communities like this, oftentimes vulnerable communities of color, as violent sort of agents of the state. And they use body camera footage to surveil, to dehumanize, and to criminalize, and to protect themselves. But we wanted to subvert that. I really wanted to flip that narrative on its head and use it for a different purpose. So that was why we made the commitment to live in the body camera. I also had an amazing editor, Deanna Lieberman, who's here. You still can't have her, but she's here tonight. So.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said, Geeta. I mean, it's like, that's, when I said subversive, it's because, and there's been quite a bit of debate about the ethics of police body cam footage as storytelling, and especially there's a really great film that I know that talks about the way it sometimes privileges in certain ways a police narrative, but here where the police are not the aggressors, the antagonists, and it feels like an upending of that, and as you say, the community that we get to know. While we're talking about editing, I want to know, it must have been just a massive editorial effort, and there were many incidents of Susan Lawrence calling. I'm sure that that didn't make it in, you having to choose which ones. I mean, can you talk a little, I know your editor could speak to this too, but just if you could speak for your editor, just kind of the decisions that were made, or maybe not.
Very. Hi, Very. But so no, there was, honestly, the calls ranged, right? So these calls ranged from, sometimes the police were there for half an hour, sometimes they were there for a couple hours, wandering around talking to different people. So we had to figure out which moments, again, were the most significant. Like I said, them walking around after a while got tiresome, but we also, we used almost every call that we had in some way. There was one that was not pertinent to the case, so that one we left out. It just didn't have anything to do with Advocacy or the community. But for the most part, we touched on every one, and we decided to keep it chronological. There was a bit of a fuss about that, meaning I had a different idea for the open, which these folks disapproved. Yeah, but they basically were like, no. So, there were some choices about the beginning, but essentially we really wanted the audience, and we truly believed, and Viri said this all the time when I wavered. Viri was like, we have to trust the audience. We committed to this body camera footage. Our audience is smart. They're going to follow it. They're going to be absorbed in the story. We don't need, because sometimes there are questions about, should we add in talking heads? Should we interview people? I didn't want to re-traumatize the community and the family by re-interviewing them, and sitting, for lengthy periods of time, particularly children. But the decision to let it build organically, I wanted to play like a thriller. That was a big thing to, again, sort of a Trojan horse for the messaging that is in there, and to hold people, to have them go on this ride, again, it's a thriller or a horror film to us, what really happened to this community.
There is a mounting dread that just accumulates through the film. That was a question about not wanting to re-traumatize the residents of this community, but I'm curious, are you in touch with them still? Did you talk to them at all during the process, whether on camera or not on camera? Or
Yeah, so we have been in contact with them. Thank you for that. Nikon and I actually went and did a community screening. And so what we've learned from Pam, the family, from the friends and the neighbors is that they don't feel re-traumatized. They actually feel that what would happen to Ajika needs to be told, and they really want it to go out into the world so that no other neighborhood, no other community is decimated by one person's violence or any violence. And so we had those thoughts. We asked ourselves the question after we left that screening, are we going to re-traumatize them? Did we re-traumatize them? And resoundingly, Pam, you all said yes. No. No.
No, it was actually healing. I felt like it was an opportunity to be amongst people who had experienced and really felt the pain. They were there that night, so they too have suffered a tremendous loss. The community is no longer the same anymore. Many have moved away, families have broken up. Obviously, kids that were once friends and being raised together are no longer together. So it was an opportunity for us to share our feelings, and the feelings that I won't say only, but we had a close-knit in terms of feelings. Like, we could relate to one another in terms of how we felt and the experiences that we lived. So it was actually, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
You know, when I watched the cuts, that's what came through to me. The uniqueness of the community, the challenges the community faced, and also, as a former editor like Geeta, I was just amazed at how this body cam footage and the way they used it and the way they shaped it made it such an original piece of storytelling. It was just phenomenal for me, and I'm very proud of Geeta and Nikon and everyone else.
Thank you, Sam.
I'm curious if you and/or Sam can speak just how about your relationship and how long you've known each other, and just kind of him coming aboard as EP.
I'm going to let Sam speak to it, just because I'll go on for hours.
I know them a long time.
The other day he said she was the love of his life.
She started out as my apprentice, and now we're partners.
Alisa and/or Nikon, I wanted to know, you've spoken a little bit about just some of the, how this came together and sort of your roles, especially in determining structure and things, but I'm just curious, were there other challenges that, I'm sure there were many, that presented themselves in the course of making the film?
So when you see this, you think it's so seamless, and it is thanks to Geeta, Nikon, Team Viri. But you have to remember, when these police come, they have this camera that's not really sophisticated. It has a mono microphone. They have all this competing noise on them, right? So you have a walkie-talkie and other things. So technically, this was really difficult. Like Geeta already explained all of that. When it was time to go into finishing, we were talking to companies and like sending them the audio, and they were like, wait, what is this? And so we're like, no, we need you. Sam Bisbee, our other producer there, who is a musician, was so serious about this. He was like, can you clean it up? But it's one mic, and he just needed to know the how. We found a great finishing house to do that. But yeah, it was challenging. I always say it was challenging really technically and emotionally. Right? You also have to understand that there's a close connection. So this is grief work. It's not easy to watch it, right? Because of the close connection.
Also maintaining the look and the feel of it, right? Because it's police body cam footage, what you think you want to do is clean it up and make it look more beautiful and more crisp and clean. And actually what we wound up settling on is really just keeping the integrity of what it was and making it feel very real so that you feel immersed into the film. And, when Veery sent us a cut, one of the first like kind of polished cuts, and I looked at it, I turned to Geeta, and I said, this is a really good film, giving ourselves a pat on the back, I guess, but saying this is a really good film, and I realized later on the reason that I thought that is because Veery and Geeta doing all of the heavy lifting made this feel like one person shot this with the intent always to follow this story. And in fact, it was, like Geeta said, maybe 15, 20 people might have shot this, right?
The police kind of inadvertently, unintentionally functioned as multicam.
That's right.
So that was really, for Veery and I, it felt like editing a narrative piece, a very badly shot, disorganized, directorless narrative piece, but that's indeed, the material sort of presented itself that way.
Kind of bringing an order out of the disorder, and also I think one of the things, as you're watching the movie, you start to piece together even just conversations between the cops and realizing, and as it's jumping, yeah.
Also, they would do a fascinating thing, which we wanted, where they would turn their body cameras off and on at different times, and suddenly someone would appear who you had no idea was there. So there was this sort of fascinating way that they also, it was very random, but we had to work through that and figure out a language for it for the audience to follow what was happening.
We often joke that the police might have known that we were doing a film because you can see that they randomly blurred people. There was no consistency. They randomly blurred objects, and we were like, wait, what's going on? They must have known that we were going to make a film from this.
There were times I wanted to call them and be like, could you all hold, when you're doing this, could you position yourself, but it was like, it was in the madness of the edit, these things come to your mind.
Exactly. Or come in and do some looping, or no.
Could you guys stand still for 10 seconds? All the rules, you don't know the rules?
Yeah. Speaking of, as Alisa was saying about in those really difficult moments, I have to ask about, I think both of the scenes, where Susan Lawrence is being held and, when she is finally handcuffed. And I remember kind of a strange thing. I remember before I'd even seen the film, before it premiered at Sundance, some of that footage was going viral on social media, and so when I saw your film, I felt like I knew the story, but the scene plays out at greater length, and now understanding the context, of course, it's infuriating to watch that even just in isolation, but with the story, it becomes this horrible culmination. I'm just wondering, can you talk about that footage? It's so important. It's painful in its own, in a very unique way that can you talk about just how much of it to include even?
I think that was a question that we often struggled with, and Veery and I struggled with, and we struggled with as a team. But I think our choice to put, we did, and of course we didn't include everything, but to put in enough so that people had to actually, what we're asking the audience to do is bear witness along with us to something terrible that has happened, to a crime. But I think for us, honestly, our choices came from Pam. So when Pam and I first talked about some of this, and I think with Takima also, this conversation came up, and with Kim and Lisi, we think about Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till, and that is who Pam has said she takes strength from. And Mamie Till, as you all know, in the Civil Rights Movement, asked or insisted that her son, that Emmett Till have an open casket funeral after he was lynched, so that the world, and invited reporters in to take pictures, so the world would know what happened to her baby. And I think for us, the bearing witness, the asking the audience to bear witness, is critical to making change. Again, we think of George Floyd. We think of videos that sparked movements. If we let things like this happen and we don't shine light on them, and they sort of just live in the dark, they will repeat. So for us, this film, and I think aligned with Pam's mission, that we want to impact change. And we think the way to impact change, you have to show people, again, you don't have to show them everything, but enough so they can understand how terrible this really was, how grave the impact was, and we hope from that we can, again, move people to take action and to demand better for themselves and their communities. We see in this film that the system, the police system, everything failed the community and also failed Susan. You know, the police did not save Susan from herself. And so we want better, and that is part of, I think, what Pam is asking for.
I want to follow up, and this will be my last question, but, and then at the end, we see the family, and I think there is a kind of formal break in the film because this is footage I understand that was shot, you shot yourselves, and it feels like something very necessary as the film becomes a tribute to Ajika Owens' life, not just her death. I'm just curious, can you talk about just, ending on a note of grace, very end.
So do you mean the trial?
No, not the trial.
Okay,
I
sorry.
mean toward the end, that's the trial. No, not during the credits, but immediately before that.
Before
where we see the yes, no.
So we didn't want Susan. There were multiple times we discussed the end. And I think there was the end where we thought we would just end on Susan. Okay, so I'm obsessed with the scene with the chair. So where Susan finally is pulled out of the room, or they beg her, and she leaves the room, and we're left with the chair, which I wanted to play long because I wanted the audience to have a minute to breathe there and absorb what had happened. And then the investigator comes back and reads what she wrote and then leaves again. And the door slams. And that was at one point our end. And then we didn't want Susan and that moment with her to be the last word. That's really what it was. Yeah, thank you, Takima. That couldn't be the last word. So that footage, and Nikon, maybe you can talk about it, what you shot. We had shot the vigil. There was stuff that we had used.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, that's it. We shot the vigil. There was several protests, and well, I guess that comes before. But yeah, we just wanted to make sure that, there's a scene where you see the boys, Ajika's kids, playing, and they're kind of really happy. And that moment was at Takima and Kim's mother's house, my aunt's house. And we wanted to, just give them a chance to just breathe. And it was a really beautiful day, Anyway, we wanted to give them a chance to have a happy day. Yeah.
Pam also said something so beautiful, too. And Pam, can you talk about what you said about, we used some of her audio when she spoke at I think it was the vigil or the funeral, but what you said about being Ajika's mother.
Ajika, she was a very young single mother. Again, her children were the center of her world. We don't see Ajika in the film, and it's mainly because Ajika would always film her children. It wasn't about her. Her children, as I said again, was the center. So you see the children, you see them happy, you see them being what children should be, playing, having a good time. But that's what Ajika wanted for her children. She sacrificed her life for her children. She lost her life for her children. She was the epitome of a mother, made the hard sacrifices that any mother would do. She put them through private school. She was the cheer mom. She was the football team mom. She did all of that gracefully, sometimes worked a second job, came home, cooked a full course meal. She was a super mom. She really was. I'm amazed at what she accomplished with her children. She taught them to be respectful. She valued education. She valued her faith. She instilled that in them. She was a beautiful soul. And again, being a single mom, she wanted better for her life and for her children. She had big dreams. We talk about different ideas of starting a business. She had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, which never came to life. But again, big dreams. And in our conversations, she would always say, Because I was like, yeah. You know, she'd say, oh, I'm going to do this, and, you know, this is going to happen. I'm like, okay, sure thing. But she always said, you'll see, the world is going to know my name. The world is going to know my name. It's unfortunate that it happened this way, but it's also a blessing because Ashika losing her life is not just a story of tragedy. It's not a story of sadness or trauma. It is an opportunity for real hope, change. It's an opportunity for us to make this world a better place, to make changes to our laws. Stand your ground.
Thank you all so much for the film and for being here. Thank you all for coming. Truly honored.
Thank you all for being here tonight.
Pam, can Pam say one more thing to you all? One moment. Go ahead, Pam.
A part of this journey in doing this and allowing this film to be made is also to make real change, as I said. And with that, myself, along with Takima Robinson, who is a philanthropist and has deep roots in activism, we've started a fund which is called Standing in the Gap, which is meant to support families who have been impacted by racial violence. We know this is going to continue to happen in some form or fashion, and this is a real opportunity. The fund, it supports family both in terms of financial needs, with mental health, with burial expenses, legal, security. We've had to secure security. We were receiving death threats, and it's an opportunity to lessen the burden that the families may experience during such tragedy. So it's my hope that the fund will just really just be supported by the world, the community, and make a real change. And both, also, it supports activism. We need changes to our laws. We see what happens when guns are placed in the wrong hands, when the wrong people have access to guns. And so that is a part of the Standing in the Gap Fund, is to make sure that there are real changes to policing, to gun violence, to laws. So Standing in the Gap Fund.
Please support Standing in the Gap and tell a friend to watch The Perfect Neighbor on October 17th on Netflix.